They probably thought the tale was ended when they betrayed you. However, they were unprepared for the conclusion to subtly become the lesson they never anticipated. Perhaps you can still recall the exact moment when everything changed, when someone you trusted made a decision that seemed incomprehensible, not just a mistake, but a betrayal. It may have been remarks they said behind your back, a pledge they broke when you most needed them, or a choice that demonstrated their allegiance was never as solid as you thought. What is the most difficult part? When someone betrays you, it frequently seems like they just leave without saying anything. They carry on with their lives as if nothing really occurred, as if it was simple to rebuild the trust you placed in them. You are left standing in the stillness of what was once a connection. You go over specific memories in your head, times when you were devoted to them and stood up for them when others questioned them. And a question gradually emerges in your mind. Are they even aware of what they did? Because treachery has a peculiar way of making one person suffer while the other appears to be unaffected at all. However, a lot of people finally learn this. The results of our deeds are not always immediately apparent in life. It waits sometimes. It waits for circumstances to change, for time to pass, and for the betrayer to eventually reach a point where it is difficult to deny the truth. And when that time comes, the story's conclusion frequently differs greatly from what people anticipated. Because it is possible that the individual who deceived you thought they had closed a chapter in their life. However, they were unaware that the story's true lesson had not yet started. One was the unexpected silence. Your silence was the first thing they did not anticipate following the betrayal. When someone betrays you, they typically anticipate a response. They anticipate rage. They anticipate lengthy communications that attempt to describe your suffering. To demonstrate how much their actions affect you, they anticipate debates, tears, or even a fight. Because when people betray someone, they frequently assume that the victim will remain emotionally attached to them despite the suffering. However, something else took place. You took a gradual step back rather than pursuing explanations or attempting to explain what they had done. Not because it was not painful to be betrayed. They probably will not even realize how much it hurt. You trusted them, so it hurt. Because you stood up for them, it hurt. It hurt because the connection you believed in suddenly showed a side you never expected to see. But eventually, something inside of you started to shift. You stopped expressing your emotions to someone who had already demonstrated that they were not paying attention. You gave up attempting to fix something that the other person had already damaged. Most significantly, you stopped pursuing someone who felt at ease breaking your confidence. They might not have noticed the difference at first. For them, life continued to flow. There were other distractions, chats, and moments throughout their days. However, there is an odd power to silence. It gradually makes room where you used to be. The messages you used to send stopped showing up. Your previous level of patience vanished. There was no longer the unreserved emotional energy you used to give them. At that point, something unexpected started to occur. They gradually began to sense the absence they had before assumed would not matter. Because the quiet left behind by someone who genuinely cared starts to say things that words could never express. And the story usually starts to change at this point. Not very loudly. Not in a big way. Quietly, though. In unexpected ways for the one who deceived you. 2. When awareness gradually develops from curiosity. After a while, an unexpected event starts to occur. The individual who deceived you begins to consider you once more. It is not regret at first. Curiosity is the reason. They start to realize that you no longer have the same level of vitality in their lives. It was you who recalled every little aspect of their day. The person who maintained composure when things got tough. When they needed someone to understand them, they listened to them. However, when that presence gradually fades, people begin to notice the change. Not right away. But slowly. Perhaps they notice something that makes them think of you. A location you two used to discuss. A tune you used to sing together. Without your viewpoint, a conversation suddenly feels lacking. And for a split second, they consider something. How are they doing now, I wonder? It seems like a straightforward idea. However, it starts to open a door they did not anticipate. Because once someone starts thinking about the person they hurt, memories follow quickly behind. They start to recall how you used to handle them. Not in a dramatic manner. However, it is the subtle ways that really count. When they were challenging, you were patient. Your efforts when things got complicated between you. Your devotion in situations where others could have just left. The feelings associated with these recollections have changed. Before they seemed ordinary. They begin to feel uncommon now. At that point, curiosity gradually develops into something more profound. Because they start posing a question to themselves that they had never thought of before. Why did I act that way toward someone? The question is awkward. The kind that forces people to look at their own actions more honestly than they ever have. And it is hard to disregard the truth once that introspection starts. They had more than one relationship with the person they had betrayed. You were a person who truly cared. Someone who supported them when things were simple. And when they were not. And the realization that the damage has already been done marks the start of a lesson they never anticipated learning. 3. When remorse starts to grow. And this is the bit they did not anticipate. The point at which comprehension gradually becomes regret. The process could start with curiosity. However, regret is what transforms everything. Because it becomes difficult for someone to overlook the difference between your behavior and their own once they begin to recall how you handled them. They start mentally reliving specific instances. Little talks that used to seem pointless suddenly have more significance. Perhaps it was the moment you attempted to resolve a miscommunication rather than simply leaving. Perhaps it was the time you stood up for them when others doubted their motives. Or the subdued devotion you displayed while everything around them was collapsing. Those things seemed regular to them at the time. Your presence seemed to last forever. Regardless of the decisions they made, they believed you would always be there. However, time has a way of bringing to light things that people used to ignore. Because people are starting to see something odd when they glance about their lives. Not everyone is as patient as you used to be. Not everyone remains when things are tough. Not everyone shows that level of sincere concern without anticipating something in return. And that insight starts to take root in their minds. The individual they deceived was more than a casual acquaintance. You were a unique individual. Someone who genuinely showed you loyalty. And regret subtly starts to grow as someone realizes the worth of something they lost. It does not happen all at once. When their thoughts go back to the past on calm evenings, it manifests. When they witness someone else being treated the same way they used to treat you, it manifests. And during those times, people start to comprehend something painful. When they betrayed you, the story did not come to a conclusion. The day you stopped giving your heart to someone who did not safeguard it was the beginning of the actual ending. And that is what they did not anticipate. Because the person they believed would never leave found the courage to do so. 4. The instant they consider returning. Eventually, a thought occurs to them that they never anticipated experiencing. The idea of contacting you once more. The cacophony of daily life should have subsided by now. The diversions that used to occupy their time are no longer as prevalent. And when the mind becomes quiet, certain thoughts begin to return. Your name appears in their memory. Not out of rage. Not at fault. But in contemplation. They begin to recall how things were when you were still in their lives. The quiet talks. The times you grasped them without needing lengthy explanations. Knowing that someone truly cared is a simple comfort. These recollections are difficult to erase. As time goes on, they actually start to notice things that they had previously missed. And eventually, a thought forms in their mind. Maybe I should talk to them again. At first it feels simple. Just a message. Just a little effort to get back in touch. However, reality then subtly intervenes. Because reaching out entails dealing with a challenging situation. It entails admitting the betrayal. It entails acknowledging that the person they have harmed may no longer feel the same way. They start to question whether you have already made progress in your life. If you are at ease without them. If you used to be patient, now you are distant. And all of a sudden, it does not feel so simple to reach out. Because they know something in their hearts that makes the situation more difficult than they anticipated. It used to be you who battled to maintain the relationship. However, you are now the one who has mastered the art of living without it. And it becomes impossible to disregard that realization. Because they envisioned a straightforward conclusion following the betrayal. They thought that life would go on in the same manner for you both. They had no idea that your courage to go would become an unchangeable aspect of the narrative. When someone betrays you, they frequently think the narrative ends there. They anticipate that you will either stay and continue to forgive them or that you will continue to feel emotionally connected to the suffering they inflicted. However, they seldom anticipate something much more subdued. Your development. Because something inside of you gradually starts to change after the betrayal. It hurts at first. You doubt yourself. You question how someone you trusted could make a decision that so quickly severed their relationship. However, those inquiries eventually give way to comprehension. You start to see things more clearly than before. You understand that when respect is lacking, loyalty cannot endure. You are aware that someone who behaves carelessly should never be trusted. And gradually, your heart begins to make a new decision. Tranquility. You cease reliving the past. When someone has already demonstrated their priorities to you, you cease looking for answers. Rather, you start concentrating on the life that lies ahead of you. Fresh encounters. New individuals. Fresh experiences that gradually restore your sense of value. And without even realizing it, you grow stronger than the damaged version of yourself. They did not anticipate that portion. They had no idea that the victim of their betrayal would move past the suffering they inflicted. They had no idea that the relationship they previously took for granted would develop into something they would never be able to get back. Because revenge is not the real conclusion of this tale. It is not rage. It is transformation. It is the moment you realize your value does not depend on someone else's ability to recognize it. And by the time they finally understand what they lost, you are no longer waiting for them to see it. You are already living a life where your peace matters more than their late realization. So if you have ever been betrayed and wondered whether the person who hurt you will ever understand the damage they caused, remember this. Life has a way of revealing truths when people least expect them. And sometimes the most powerful ending to a painful story is simply this. You moved forward. And the person who once betrayed you is left realizing the value of someone they can never have again. If this message spoke to your heart, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who may need this reminder today. Because sometimes a single story can help someone understand their worth and finally find the strength to protect it.